And then I went back to MIT for sophomore year, and then it started getting real. I started taking classes within my major, and I was like, oh boy, this is brutal.
Welcome. Today I am joined by Heather M. Nelson. Heather is in Hanoi. She's quarantining. Very exciting. I'm still in Brazil. Today we're here to talk about Heather's experience. She's done lots of really cool stuff. So maybe just to get started, Heather, do you want to introduce yourself? 30-second or 1-minute intro. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Sure. I'm Heather Nelson. I just graduated from MIT last spring with a degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in design. I'm from New Jersey, and right now I am quarantining in a quarantine hotel room in Hanoi, Vietnam, as part of a scholarship program.
Awesome. So from New Jersey, ended up at MIT. Maybe we could rewind a little bit. Some of the viewers are from high school, so you could explain like what was high school Heather like? How have you maybe evolved since then? Do you think you've changed a lot over the last 5 years or stayed mostly the same?
Well, okay, so over the course of high school, I definitely changed a lot. Like I came in a literal child at 14 years old, and then I came out an adult or a young adult. And during those 4 years, I grew up. I grew into, I think, mostly the person that I am today. I think I'm still a curious little kid who can find pretty much anything really interesting. But now I'm just I'm more confident. I'm a little bit louder. I know a lot more, particularly physics. I've been more places. I've met more people, and those things just continue to shape me. But overall, I think I'm still the same.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe we can talk a little bit about from high school to MIT. How did you first get interested in MIT? Maybe what led you to apply?
I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do when I was applying to colleges at Exeter. Believe it or not, I applied to liberal arts schools, and engineering schools. I really had just no clue like what I wanted to do. I mean, at all of those different types of schools, I applied to like similar-ish programs, like in like the industrial design, architecture, mechanical engineering realm at all of those places, but was not sure at all. All I knew was that coming out of Exeter, I really liked math and science, and I really liked art and design, and I wanted to find a way to bring all of that together. I wanted to be able to do all of those things in my future career, as well as 4 years in college. So I was looking for a way to combine that. So I applied to MIT. I was not convinced that that was the place for me when I was applying. I thank you to my dad because he was really the one that convinced me to do it. I didn't think that it was the place for me, nor did I think that I would get in, but he was like, just throw an application in there, like just do it. So I threw an application in there, and then I ended up getting in. So MIT has a day in the spring, Pi Day on March 14th, when they announced the admissions at the specific time, like 3.14159. So at 1:59 p.m. or something, at like their seconds mark. So it's like the digits of pi, like a clock. And that's when they released the decisions. And that's like well publicized and like well known, but I did not know this. And I was not checking the MIT website at this point. And I did not check it that entire day. And then on March 15th, 3:15, I got an email that was like congratulations again on getting in. And I was like, what? No way. So it was exciting. And I ended up getting a nice financial aid package. And I was really wary going to my campus revisit weekend in like the spring of senior year, because I was like, oh, this is not the place for me. Like I also like books and did a lot of writing at Exeter, and I was like, I feel like I'm just more of a like rounded person as opposed to an MIT person. But I ended up finding people like pretty immediately on campus that I resonated with, and yeah, just fell in love, like found my people like kind of immediately. And like those were the people that I ended up connecting with when I eventually came to MIT like the next fall.
So this transition from Exeter to MIT, what was that like for you going into freshman year? Do you think like Exeter really prepared you? Was there any like cultural differences. I know the the culture of MIT is pretty distinct, and the Exeter culture is also pretty distinct. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that freshman year transition.
It was a bit wild. I gotta say, it was, yeah, it was just a bit shocking. Like coming from a place, Exeter, where nothing matters more than like opinions, like your prose,
Mm,
going to a place like MIT, which is a largely like apolitical place where people don't really care as much about having those kinds of like political opinions that were so charged at Exeter. Most people couldn't be bothered to define the word prose for you. It was a bit of a shock to me, but it was also super inspiring because there were just all these unique and passionate and just so smart people everywhere, and to get to know and to learn alongside. So it was really exciting. And MIT has a really cool dorm culture system. I guess you can like kind of liken it to Exeter, except for you like pick where you want to live as opposed to just getting like randomly sorted. But each dorm and even floors within the dorms have specific cultures and traditions that go back even decades. And during orientation, you are encouraged to go around to events that like every living group hosts and like pick like which group you resonate with the most. So I think a lot of people end up finding a place that feels like home, like almost immediately. And that's certainly what happened to me. I moved to a floor after this whole like residential exploration process that I lived on for all 4 years. And like I had 50 best friends immediately who like all wanted to get to know me. So that made the transition like a lot easier.
that's awesome. I remember hearing that MIT, like I think maybe a decade or two ago, had really serious mental health problems, and then they got a lot of the students to create initiatives to foster more community and change like a lot of the culture there. What were some of the cool traditions that your dorm had? Maybe you could talk a little bit about the social scene as well. I heard MIT's like parties are really fun. That's what I heard through the grapevine.
I had a really good, like fun social time at MIT. Well, okay, so my floor, my specific floor, we have a like culture that has traditions that just go back pretty far. And we have this party that we throw on an annual basis in the spring, and we call it DTYD, Dance Till You Drop, or any other thing that you might want to like put under those letters. And it was during my during my junior year, it was the 50th anniversary of this party. I was one of the like organizers of the event, and we had 150 alums, like specifically from our floor, come back to like be at this event. And we had like a whole weekend. We had like an alumni hockey game, like we had a formal, we had barbecues. People that graduated in, what was it, like 69 or 79, like came back. So or maybe they were 69 years old. Maybe that was what it was. They came back and they were like so happy to like see that the tradition was still happening, because they were like, I was at DTYD 1 and like it's still happening 50 years later. Yeah, it was just so fun. I mean, it's just it's cool to have connections that go that far back, and that like I'm gonna care about my floor like for a really long time, probably 50 years. Like if
Yeah.
DTYD 100 happens and like I'm still kicking, like I'm gonna show up for sure.
That's so awesome. We'll catch Heather at DTYD 100. Sounds like you had a blast. Maybe you could walk us through, aside from freshman year, there was sophomore, junior, senior year. What was it like semester by semester? Like which one would you say was your proudest, strongest semester, and which one were a little bit tougher?
Wow. Okay. Whoa. Okay. So many questions. Let's see. So freshman fall at MIT was the most fun semester, probably, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but at MIT, freshman fall is pass no record,
Mhm.
meaning that you take your classes, and if you pass them, you get a P on your transcript. And if you don't pass them, it's just not on your transcript, as if you never tried to take the class at all. So there's like very low stakes, as in there's no stakes. There's no stakes. I mean, you don't want to repeat a class, but it's like pretty easy to not fail, especially like the freshman general institute requirements. And I think P&R is just a great policy, especially at MIT, because MIT, it's really, I can't stress this enough, so hard. Like, it is really just a tough time. Like, the academics are pretty brutal. Like, you will fail tests. I failed my first ever physics test, like, by a lot. And I was like, oh boy, I'm not ready for this. But I was like, it's okay. I'm in P&R. Like, I'll probably pass the class. Like, my homeworks will like bring me up. But I think it's a great policy because like otherwise I would have been freaking out about failing that first class. And I still was, because I mean, I care about my academics and I like want to learn this stuff. Like I demonstrated a lack of understanding of the material by failing that test pretty poorly. And I wanted to understand it. So I still like freaked out a little bit, but not as much as if like my like grades were on the line, you know. I was able to go out and make connections and like start going to clubs and meet people that first semester, which was just so important because I mean, people are the most important thing, right? I mean, there's like academics are amazing, but like what is it to be doing well in academics or life if you don't have people to like share it with and like really like relationships to like grow with and learn from and have fun with. So I was able to like make really strong relationships with a lot of different people that like lasted me throughout all 4 years and now like at MIT. So that was a really fun semester and I like learned a lot like academically, but without all the pressure, and I made a lot of friends, which was like really important for when you have to worry about grades a little bit. Yeah, and you like want to have those connections to like lean back on. And then freshman spring was still had lots of fun. Because the freshman classes are not like as difficult because I wasn't taking any classes like within my major yet, because at MIT you have to go through a lot of other schools probably would find them ridiculous, all of the general institute requirements. Like everybody's got to take classical mechanics and electromagnetism and a biology class and a chemistry class, a coding class. And so you got to get like all these things out of the way before everyone has to take multivariable calculus. And then if you're going to be an engineering student, you have to take differential equations, and most people are engineering students. So pretty much everybody has to take diffie-q. So like your freshman year is just kind of all like that kind of stuff. So it still wasn't like crazy hard and didn't have to like make decisions about what I wanted to study like quite yet. So still really fun. My freshman summer, I worked in a lab in France, which was awesome. I lived in Grenoble. That was awesome. It was, I took French all throughout like middle school and Exeter. So I was like psyched to finally be able to use it. And I was like speaking French at my job and like somewhat in my social life. So it was cool to like have that be like validated and really like work on that. And just being in France, being in Grenoble in the summer, it's so beautiful. I would like go to the park like after work every day on the weekends, like drink wine, eat cheese with my friends, like in the park. Like it was very good. It was a good life. And in Grenoble specifically, like if you take a bus in any direction, if you just stay on long enough, you'll be like at the base of a mountain because it's in the middle of the Alps. So I did a lot of hiking and I did a lot of traveling within France, mostly in like the south. Just gorgeous place to be. And then I went back to MIT for sophomore year, and then it started getting real. I started taking classes within my major, and I was like, oh boy, this is brutal. Because like the leap from freshman year to sophomore year is just like they expect you to kind of be an engineer a little bit, and I'm like, okay, whoa, I don't know about this. Like I can write you an essay, I'm not sure. And yeah, I think sophomore fall was probably my hardest semester. Because of that, I was also a little bit frustrated with the lack of appreciation of like arts at MIT, because I mean, I had like still just come from Exeter, and I loved like the Exeter English classes, you know, and I loved taking art classes at Exeter, and I like took language at Exeter, you know, Like I did all those things and I really enjoyed all those things. And then suddenly those were mostly just like gone. At MIT, you have to take a humanities class. Like you have to take 8 humanities classes over the course of your MIT experience. And I did that, and I took mostly literature and writing classes because that's what I was interested in. But like they just like weren't as rigorous. Like a paper that if I had written at Exeter, I would hand in an MIT and I would get like an A on this paper. But I knew that if I had handed that in at Exeter, I would get like B. Like they would be like, brutal, Heather. Like you just did this, so it was just not as rigorous, and I was like getting frustrated by that, and school was hard, and I had just gotten an IUD in as well, and hormonal like contraceptives like can really just kind of like it just messes with you, and I didn't really know, I didn't really expect that to be the case as well, and it's hard for you to realize that that's happening, like when it is happening, especially when so many other things are changing around you. So that was just like another layer of why it was difficult. But I made it through because I had those connections that I made my freshman year with people. Yeah, I made it through and I learned a lot, and I like came out feeling like much more confident about myself because I was able to do it, because initially it just felt like impossible to try to like solve these equations and like be in this environment. But like making it through, like I proved to myself that like I could do it. And then IAP of my sophomore year. So MIT has independent activities period, which is January, where you can do whatever you want. Every college should totally have this. You can do anything. Like you could do nothing. You could go home and do nothing. You could be at MIT and do nothing. You could take like a class outside of your major or inside of your major, like just a condensed class. You can do research at MIT. You can do abroad programs. That's what I did. I applied to like a global teaching labs program, and I went to Jordan, and I was teaching electronics workshops at a fab lab in Irbid, which is the city outside of Amman in Jordan. And that was awesome. I loved it there. If you have the chance to go to Jordan, like you must. The people were so nice. Like every single person that I met there was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, like come to my home, like I'll make you mansaf, I'll make you magluba, like come smoke shisha in my home with all my like cousins and brothers and sisters, and like everyone was just so kind to me, and it's the natural beauty there is just absolutely, it's amazing. I probably had the highest concentration of like allergic reactions during that month of my life, but despite that, I still was thriving. So it was like, Jordan, good, yes. And then I came back for the spring. I think that's when I joined the self-assembly lab, which I spent a lot of time doing research at that particular lab, which I can talk more about like outside of this like large overview of what I did at MIT. Classes started getting like a little bit more real, more within my major, but I was feeling a little bit more confident. And I was part of the MIT ring committee, like the MIT class ring. My camera is terrible. You can't see this at all. But the MIT class ring is redesigned every year by the class that wears it. So I was elected to be on the committee that was designing our ring. And then we have this big event in the spring of the sophomore year where you like everyone gets their rings. So that was like a really like fun event. And it was cool to be like on like the organizing side of that, because it's such like a quintessential MIT experience to like get your rings, and like everyone's posing for pictures like this. Yeah, and then like once you get your ring, you're like, I'm an MIT student. Like I made it through halfway through my sophomore spring. So like I've done it. I've done so much already. That was a really like happy moment. And then sophomore summer, I did an internship in Spain at Airbus outside of Madrid, and I was working on a a 3D printer that uses recycled carbon fiber filament, because carbon fiber, I mean, is just a really amazing composite material with a very high strength to weight ratio, but it's very hard to reuse and recycle it, because it has directionality to it. But if we can learn how to 3D print it well using the recycled filament, then that's like a very powerful tool for prototyping, especially in aerospace applications, which is why we were doing it at Airbus, because you really need things to be light on planes, but you also need them to be strong. So, and that was awesome. I loved Spain. I'm so glad that I went to France before Spain, because I prefer Spain very much so to France. So I loved my summer in France, but I loved Spain so much more. So I'm glad that I did it in that order. And I learned some Spanish. I traveled a bunch. I met a lot of people. It was a really great time. And then my best friend was working in Nice in France that summer. And then we did a 2-week Euro trip after both of our internships ended, which was really fun. You know the song Vienna by Billy Joel?
Yep.
Yeah, so we heard that song and we loved it, and the lyrics are Vienna waits for you, and we were Vienna's waiting for us, we shouldn't keep her waiting any longer. So the first thing that we did in planning our Euro trip, really kind of the only thing that we did, we booked flights from Vienna back to Paris because we were flying out of Paris back to the US. So we were okay, we're gonna do a tour and somehow end up in Vienna on this date to go back to Paris, to go back to the US. And we just kind of made it up as we went along otherwise. And we hit a bunch of major European cities. I think it was Paris. Well, for me, it was Madrid, Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Paris, New York. Yeah. And then I came back to Boston for junior year. Yes, junior year, I was I'm a real engineer, good vibes. I had a great summer. I don't know. I took a film photo class that semester, just kind of on a whim as an extra class, which ended up being pretty impactful for me, because now it's one of my favorite things to do. I just love it. It's so creative, but there's also such a huge technical aspect to it, because you really have to understand the camera and optical physics, or I guess it's probably similar with digital cameras, but I feel there's a larger barrier to entry with film, because you have to understand aperture and speed so much better to get a photo at all. Yeah, it's so cool. It's a combination of art and serendipity, but also an understanding of optical physics and chemistry. And I was wow, I love this. And being in a dark room was just very, very meditative for me, especially in all of the crazy hecticness of MIT. So that was a great thing. Junior IAP, I went to Italy and did research on magnetostrictive materials and was just having a good time, drinking lots of coffee. I went on a road trip from Rome to Florence, and then went back to Benevento. Yeah, I basically used MIT's money to get me to travel all across Europe and the Middle East. That's kind of the
as you should.
Yeah, it's the theme if you haven't noticed. Yeah, and then I came back for junior spring, and that was probably my most intense semester. I was taking this class that it's called, I forget what it's called, honestly, because all of the classes at MIT just have numbers. Everything at MIT is just numbers. At first I was I'm so sick of this, but you just get caught onto it so fast. All of the majors are numbers. I'm course 2, and if you're computer science, you're course 6, and everything's numbers. All the buildings are numbers. I don't know the names of any buildings. It's all just, my class is in building 16, and all of the classes, are you in 2001 this semester? No, I'm in 6003, or I don't know. Yeah, this class was 272, and it's this somewhat, it's notorious, infamous, famous, I don't know. There's a lot of words you could describe to this class, where you make a desktop lathe that has a repeatability of 50 microns, and it's with this professor, Marty Culpepper, who's I mean, he's pretty much like a genius when it comes to mechanical engineering, but he's also is just an intense person. And like the first class, like I almost cried after the first class because I was like, I can't do this. Even though I was feeling good about my engineering skills, like he was just like, you might fail. Like you might fail this class. Like, and that's like not on me. Like I'm giving you all of like the resources or that you need to do this, and like you don't get second shots like when you're engineering machines or bridges in real life, because like people's lives are at stake, so you need to learn how to be a good engineer. And I was like, oh whoa, okay, that's like real life right now, just like real quick. That class was crazy, but ended up being like one of the most like formative classes that I took, because we ended up doing it. We ended up designing and machining a desktop lathe that we validated as having a repeatability of 50 microns, which is like half of the width of a human hair. What else was I doing that semester? I was doing a lot of research at the self-assembly lab. That was the semester that DTYD 50 party was happening, so I was planning that. I ended up becoming a TA for the film photography class. That was the spring. It was very intense. I was also in another like intense research class, but it was fun. And by the time it was over, I was like, whoa, I think I'm a real engineer now, which is a cool feeling. And then junior summer, I went to the Netherlands, Europe again. I actually was not like planning on being in Europe for third summer. I was kind of actively trying to not, because I was like, because internships in Europe are not super high paying. That's just the culture. Whereas if you were to do an engineering internship in America, you make bank, especially at a lot of the places that MIT engineers end up interning. But I found this company and they happened to be in Amsterdam, and I already loved Amsterdam from when I visited it the previous, I think both summers I visited Amsterdam when I was in France and Spain, and I just loved it. So I was like, I have to go. And it was this company that was developing a large scale metal 3D printer, or had already developed it, but were continuing to do so using wire arc additive manufacturing. So to put that in simple terms, it's essentially a welding torch on a 6-axis robot that you can program that just like continuously welds layers. And they do a lot of design, like installation type design work with the technology. And at that point, I was really interested in design and doing something like creative with my engineering skills. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then I went there and I worked on designing and printing and testing a 3D printed aluminum bicycle frame. Printing with aluminum was something that was like still in the works, and something that we had to really like research to make sure that it was going to print well. And that was just so fun. Working there was just a great experience. It was super international. So like I was just surrounded by a bunch of creative, smart engineers and designers from like all over Europe, as well as there was a Kiwi guy, and then there was me, an American, So it was just like this whole like mix of a whole bunch of cultures and languages, and it was really fun. Oh, actually that summer, I have an Exeter related story for that summer. So I couldn't find housing in Amsterdam, because you can't find housing in Amsterdam. It's impossible. If you are trying to find housing in Amsterdam, good luck. Like you have to be there, and you have to be like active on like these Facebook groups that like post like listings, and then you have to like type it in and like visit the house. And like a lot of them are like, you'll have roommates, so you have to like get the roommates to like you. So like finding a house and not getting scammed in like a good part of Amsterdam while you're not in Amsterdam is just, forget it. Like it's just not gonna happen. But I didn't know that, because I had never lived in Amsterdam before. So I was like trying to no avail to find a place. So I messaged in the Exeter alumni chat, like Facebook group. And I was like, hi, does anybody know anything about Amsterdam or live there? Because I'm trying to find a place to live and I can't. And then this one woman replied back and was like, oh, DM me, I live here. So I messaged her and she gave me these websites to look at, which I had already looked at, but like hadn't had any luck on. So I was like, oh, thank you. And then 2 weeks before I moved to Amsterdam, she messaged me again and was like, did you find anything? And I was like, no, I was just gonna like stay in a hostel like while I figure it out. I'm not sure. And she was like, oh, in the spirit of non-city, you can stay in my house in my extra room while you find a place to live. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. That is so kind. She gave me like a video tour of her apartment like before I came. And she actually wasn't there for the first week and a half that I was there. She was on visiting family in America. So like one of her friends like picked me up from the train station and gave me keys and let me in and like showed me around the apartment. And I had never met Adrienne, like the woman who owned the apartment. So there was like a lot of trust there in like the Exeter community. And then she came back, and the first night that she was back, we had champagne together and like talked about our experiences at Exeter. And then like 3 days later, like she brought me to drinks with like friends of hers, and we were like on this balcony of some place, and she was like, are you still looking for like somewhere else to live? I was like, oh yeah, I have these places in mind. And she was like, just stop looking, like you can just be here for the rest of the summer. And I was like,
That
thank
is
you.
amazing. That is so so heartwarming.
I know, I love her. She's amazing. We had such a good time together. She introduced me to so many different people, and like a bunch of my friends from MIT ended up visiting me that summer, and we would like all go out to dinner or drinks together and stuff. It was awesome. And her apartment was so nice, and it was in like the center of Amsterdam. Like when I would tell people where I lived, they would be like, are you kidding me? Like, how can you afford that? And I'm like, okay, yeah, where was I? So Amsterdam, awesome. I loved it there. I would love to go back and live there again in the future. I think that I might try to plan on doing that. Then senior year happened. I was like, what am I doing with my life? And that fall semester was kind of difficult in that way, because I was like, what do I hadn't actually thought ahead enough to figure out what I want to do after graduation. So I was suddenly confronted with those questions, which was difficult, but also like necessary, like you just got to go through that. And I took the engineering capstone class where you have to it's a crazy class. It's you have to make a product from start to finish. It's called 2009. If you Google it, 2.009 MIT, you'll see like these crazy final presentations with like, I don't know, the production value of this is crazy. Like you'd think it's American Idol or something. That's like a dated. So that was crazy. I would spend like 40 hours a week on this class, and I also was taking like 3 other classes and doing research. It was wild. Yeah, but it was awesome. The team that I was on ended up making this alternative to a buoyancy compensation device for scuba divers that has a fixed volume. So buoyancy is constant once you set it, so it doesn't change as you change it in depth. So you can be neutrally buoyant throughout your entire dive. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience to like make something from start to finish. And then I was one of the 3 people that presented for my team. We fill this whole like auditorium, and there was like, I think like, I forget if it was like 50,000 like unique IP addresses like signed into the webcast. Like it was like, it's nuts. Like people like watch this if you like care about, I don't know, MIT and like product design. Adam Savage, like from Mythbusters. He made a video that was like projected on the screen during one of the interludes. I freaked out because I mean, as an engineer, like Adam Savage naturally is my hero, right? So I was like, are you kidding me? And I thought he was gonna be there and like come out on stage, which did not happen. But his face like addressing our product specifically, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Yeah. And then senior IAP, I just hung out with friends. I was like, I'm almost done with this whole thing. Then senior spring happened. I didn't have any like requirements left, so I just kind of took classes that I thought were fun. And then I had to go home because of the pandemic. And that's what my MIT experience was like.
Okay, seems like you did quite a few things. I'm noticing a theme: going to Europe, building cool stuff, drinking, building more cool stuff, and then coming back. Really, really awesome. Yeah, you had champagne in Amsterdam, drinking wine in Paris, and I guess I have two questions, and then I'll let you go, Heather. That was I think that was like more than spectacular. So out of all these projects, right, you did you did several IAPs, you taught refugees in Jordan, you did the Airbus, you worked at Airbus in Spain, recycling carbon fiber, magnetostrips in Italy, Culpepper's class. Like, what was your favorite project that you worked on?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question because I kind of skipped over this, but this is like one of the most important parts of my MIT experience was working at the self-assembly lab. So I worked on several projects, but for the better part of 2 years, I was working on this one project that is called Growing Islands, where we were researching types of geometries for submersible passive objects or systems of objects that when they interact with the wave energy in an atoll environment in the Maldives, that was our like test site, can promote the targeted accumulation of sand, which would eventually be able to create sandbars, which can protect coastlines from inclement weather due to climate change, or add to islands to prevent them from suffering from rising sea levels due to climate change, or even potentially even create new islands. And it's a very ongoing project. It's very experimental, but we've had some decent, promising results like in the field in the Maldives. And working on that project really just changed the course of what I wanted to be doing. And like that senior fall, when I was thinking about what it is that I want to do after graduation, and I was thinking about what the most important parts of my MIT experience was, I was like, I think it was really this project because I was able to apply things that I know and understand and am interested in, like fluid mechanics and geometry and design and the ocean. I'm from New Jersey near the shore, so it's like always been important to me. But then applying those skills and passions to something that can make a difference, like that can matter. So I really became a lot more interested in climate and sustainability because the way that we're living on this planet is just unsustainable, and we don't respect the environment that houses us and nourishes us, and not just us but everything else as well. Yeah, instead we're just stamping out the vibrance of this environment with like greed and complexity, and soon it's going to it's all going to come back to us. I mean, it already is. All these hurricanes, these droughts and landslides and rising seas, other extreme weather events. And nature is just this tangle of powerful forces that all rely on one another, and we're just throwing it out of balance with our desire to tame it to our convenience without thinking enough about the consequences. So I don't want to see us destroy this planet, and I don't want to see the suffering that's going to come from it. A lot needs to change, but every bit counts, and I'm trying to learn how I can best do my part with the knowledge and experience and interests that I have. That project is like the Growing Islands project is what like got me to those conclusions and that line of thinking. And I'm very grateful to that it like opened up my eyes there.
That's amazing. So I guess that's a nice segue to the last question, which is a little bit about the future, the path that you're taking now. You're in Hanoi as a loose scholar, I think.
Loose scholar, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what does the next few months look like for you? Do you have a plan for the next couple of years? And it's okay to be like still figuring it out. But yeah, let us know. I'm curious.
So I applied to this loose scholarship because I thought it would be nice to gain some more international. What?
I thought I was making a joke. I said to finally leave Europe and come to Asia.
Oh. No, I thought it would be nice to gain some international experience outside of Europe because like the problems that I want to work on from an engineering standpoint like are not going to just affect me on the East Coast and like the European countries that I've been to. And like as like rising sea level is one of the problems that I've researched the most. I wanted to be in a country that was affected, that is going to be affected and is being affected by that. So yeah, I am in Vietnam now, and after I get out of quarantine, I'm planning to join a team at a Vietnamese organization that is researching biomass gasification cook stove technologies. It's not rising sea levels, but it's still sustainability related. I'm
Mhm.
going to be working on developing the biomass gasification technology and working with local farmers to see what their needs are, see how I can best design that and best work on that. I plan on being in Vietnam for a little bit. My visa is going to be 6 months, but it seems like I should be able to extend it beyond that. So I'll be here at least 6 months. But if I feel like I like it here and am able to contribute well and like the project, then I think that I'll want to like stay on for a while.
Mm.
And I've also like put a lot of energy in trying to learn Vietnamese, so I want to be able to hopefully become fluent in that or like near fluent. So I have to be here for a while for that. Then after that, I really don't know. I'm just gonna kind of keep writing it out and see what happens, what opportunities come about. Yeah, I think eventually I want to go to grad school, but because I love school and research environments are very cool, but I don't have total clarity on exactly what I would want to study or what I would want my thesis to be. So I'm like waiting until I have that clarity before I start those applications.
That's wonderful, Heather. Wow, I feel like you did college right, like perfectly. Like you were like working on so many different projects, exploring your interests, getting all that travel in, and I think that this approach is just marvelous because it sounds like you're working on lots of different projects, but all under the same themes that you really care about. Like you're doing some stuff which is like more mechanical engineering focused. Then you've worked with like I think you mentioned stuff in water. I don't remember the exact term that you used, but you know, the scuba diving buoyancy compensation device, and then building islands. And now it sounds like you're delving a little bit into food sustainability. And if I remember correctly, I think you traveled with Julia to do one of those programs. I forgot what country it was in where you were. Am I getting it right?
Ireland, yeah.
In Ireland? Yeah, where you were working with on the farm. So this is like I can just see you continuing and progressing with a lot of the things that you've cared about so deeply even at Exeter. But yeah, this has been really inspiring. I feel really invigorated. And I think what you're doing is super duper noble. It sounds like you're still developing, continuing to refine your engineering toolkit. And at this point, I think we can all agree that Heather is very much like a real engineer. But yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's it for today. Do you have any final thoughts or things you want to say? Maybe if there's like a young engineer who's thinking about some of these ideas or problems that they want to solve, maybe you could offer some advice for like 30 seconds or a minute, and then we'll wrap it up.
Engineering's the best. Engineering is it's so fun. It's just real life problem solving. It gives you a framework to understand the world in ways that you would not think is imaginable. Like knowing all of this physics, like all of this chemistry, all these equations, just I feel like it makes you look at the world with so much wonder because you have all of this like knowledge and framework to look at things. So I love being an engineer and I love hanging out with engineers because it's fun. Like it's like there's so much to learn, and the more that you learn, the more interesting and exciting like anything gets. I think that there's like a saying that the engineers find the most boring things like the most interesting. I mean, that's a cool way to live life. I gotta say, like if you can find the most boring things interesting, imagine how you can see the most interesting things. Like it's just it's fun to be an engineer. So keep trying at it, keep going. It's tough, but you gotta stick through it. You gotta like learn a bunch of things, and like learning things is a process. So just stick with it, and if you want to be an engineer, you can be.
There you go, guys. If you are a young engineer and you're working hard through the night on a P set, just know that you can get through this. Okay, well, thank you so much, Heather. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know it's getting kind of late on the other side of the globe. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, maybe you can leave them in the comment section, and then I'll pester Heather and she can come in and respond to those when she has a free hour or so while she's quarantining in Hanoi. But thank you so much, Heather. I learned a ton about MIT, about all the cool stuff that you've been doing. And I seriously meant it when I said, like, I feel so much inspired, so much more inspired and motivated than I was even an hour ago. So thank you so much.
Good. Yeah, it was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.